What's up, guys? So, welcome to your first session on the Open Water Safety Masterclass. I'm hoping that these would be the only sessions that you would ever need in your journey to open waters, whatever that may be surfing, diving, swimming, etc. Or just recreational use. You're a beach lover and you want to be a lot more safe in the water, right? So, this session is for you. All right. We're going to be splitting our entire course into two segments primarily. The first segment would be understanding open water systems. So we'd be talking about how every element in the environment functions, and we'd be making physical observations on that. And the second one would be how to interact with said environments, because we'll learn what to do and not to do when we are in certain particular areas or particular water bodies, right? So that's the two segments. So when we begin with understanding open waters, the first thing we all know is that the earth is 75% water. So we have 75% salt water. I think 1% is consumable in that. So we have a lot of salt water around us, and in our life, wherever you are, it's highly probable that you're going to end up by a beach overlooking a vast water body, right? That's the ocean. So the first thing we need to understand is how to observe the ocean. So we're going to look at cues, we're going to look at how the ocean works as a system, most with a lot of emphasis on the beach and the shoreline conditions. So that's because primarily that's where we are going to operate from. So wherever you are, you're going to be most likely entering from the beach into the waters. In order to understand open waters, I think it's always easier to put it on a scale and begin by analyzing the extremes. So for instance, let's compare the similarities between the ocean and a swimming pool, right? So similarities, forgive my handwriting, the ocean and a swimming pool. Most likely, I think the first thing that we would know is they're both finite. They're both water bodies, so they both have water in them. They both have deep zones relatively. We'll cover that entire thing later. Then they're both affected by environmental factors. This is a little more exaggerated. We're talking about the exaggeration. It's a lot more exaggerated here than it is here. So these would be similarities. Now let's look at differences, right? The first thing that would come to our head is that pools generally have boundaries. They're very finite. So everyone knows and learns how to swim from point A to point B, and very interestingly, a lot of people stick to this for the rest of their lives. So once you start swimming open waters, once you start doing ocean swimming, oh man, there's no going back. You can't do that anymore. So because now with open waters, the concept of point A and point B changes, because it's no longer finite. Like your point A and point B can be here, right? Or if you want to cross the entire ocean, your point B can be there. But I think our purpose would be solved here, because we're trying to understand this a bit more. And the next part is the sighting, which is a huge issue, because pools condition you to look down and swim. So as you get better, it's like a racehorse blinder. You get smaller and smaller goggles that's just designed to find that nice light yellow tinge in the water that will help you, that guide yourself. Here, open waters, you have to sight above. Like everything is sighting above the water. So imagine it's a complete flip. And most of the people, the game changes once they figure this out. Honestly, that's a tip. I'll leave you with sight more. Then pools have known depths. It's mentioned the depth. So we get very conditioned to casually walking past a 10-foot deep zone. And with the ocean, it's really unknown. Like we don't know where it's deep. So this is known depth, unknown depths. And hopefully after this masterclass, you should be able to kind of judge depth very, very quickly. It's one of the first things that you can pick up in a very short time, right? So the next part would be once you understand depths, you can move to what is another difference. The ocean has got salt water. So larger the water body is, more minerals they generally accumulate. So salt water, this is fresh chlorinated water. Uh, okay, cool. And then anything else? So I think we covered most of it. If there is anything else, please drop it on the comments, and we can pick it up from there as well. So I'm really hoping you guys interact with me through these sessions, so I can really help you out in whatever you need when it comes to open waters. When I do this difference, I really like doing this with kids, because one of them quickly points out that the ocean has got animals, and nailed it. There are so many animals in the ocean, and we all know that it's their home in the first place, right? Every time we visit open waters, we are just guests, so we need to be polite first. So she nailed it, but I couldn't get her to figure this out. Maybe you guys will understand if you've ever been to a crowded pool. Like, those are the real animals, guys. Like, it's so many people in the water, you're so stressed. Like, I hate swimming in crowded pools. I can't even do a lap, because I know there is someone going to cross, there's a kid going to jump into the water, and I hate it. Like, it's just a small confined environment with so many people. I'm not. Animals in the ocean, at least when it comes to my experience, the Bay of Bengal has been great, because I've swum with dolphins, I've had so many animal interactions, positive and negative. We'll talk about marine stings and bites like a lot later, because we. All right, so with the next part, let's do a similar scale contrast to kind of identify and understand the beach, and we'll take it to the ocean from there. So the first part would be, if you can imagine on a beach scale. I'm sure most of us would have been to different kinds of beaches at least 20, 30 times, most of us. I'm hoping, if you're watching this video and you're swimming, I'm hoping you've been to the beach at least 20, 30 times. Here's a clear distinction that we can identify and understand. Beaches can be put in scales. A scale would be ranging from a reflective beach to a dissipative beach, right? And somewhere right in between would be called an intermediate beach. Now, the thing with an intermediate beach is, I would ask you to focus more on the extremes. Try and figure out which part, like when you try and figure out whenever you go to a beach, to just see whether the beach slope is really like greater than 40 degrees is what we generally say, but it's a slopy curve to the shore and the ocean is right here, as opposed to a dissipative beach where the slope is not as great. So ideal examples, when it comes to India, close to 73% of beaches are reflective beaches, and it's all got a lot to do with global warming, which I don't think we have the scope to cover that in this particular program. But reflective beaches, so we have a lot more beaches that are slopy as compared to shallows. A great understanding of a dissipative beach would be the Andamans, right? If you just walk into the water very casually, and it's so gentle, and there are barely any waves, as opposed to a reflective beach. You would see bigger waves. In fact, they're called surging waves or closing waves, but we will cover waves when we'll cover that types when we do that. And the waves here are spilling and peeling, so it's the wave patterns itself are different, so that itself gives you an understanding. And the swash zone, the water climbs faster and goes down a lot more faster. Here the water does climb in but goes out a lot more slowly, right? So that really changes a beach ecosystem. And when we start understanding this, it starts to get a little easier. Cool. Okay. So think about the beaches that you have been to. Just imagine like you are standing here. Do you generally see the shoreline below you, or do you see it at eye level? That's a good identifier. Now I just realized that given that I've already told you about this, I should also cover a couple of other things. We just quickly do a quick differentiation of the two, right? A quick aspect would be to understand. So I'll talk about it in terms of waves. I think they're all very simple terms. We will also, I'll be putting in a lot of terminologies, and maybe we can reference it at any point in this video, right? So you don't have to memorize them, but just understand that when we talk about the ocean and when we talk about everything that we observe, most of them have been clearly defined. So what we're looking for are these defined terms. We're not doing something new. Okay, cool. So the first part is a reflective beach would have high energy waves. That means high energy waves, low energy waves. So this just simply means that from the ocean, the wave literally crashes closest to the shore as opposed to further out. And here, the wave kind of crashes here and kind of slows down. So it breaks. Every time a wave crashes, it starts to lose momentum and energy, which is why it's easier to handle a wave closer to the shore than it is at the break zone, right? Okay, cool. And the next part would be a quick understanding is you can always look at sediment size. The sand is generally a lot more coarse on right by the swash zone, and here it's finer because the wave carries the energy at which the sands are transported. It's able to carry higher, like thicker particles of sand as compared to a dissipative beach, which already drops all the heavy sand right here, and then all the fine sand starts to move to the shore, right? So that's a very interesting fact. Let's maybe redefine the slopes. Since we're talking about a little bit of exaggeration, let's say the slope is greater than 40 degrees, right? So it's really slopey, and that's most of Indian beaches, by the way. So 40 degrees, 35 to 40 degrees. Then a slope that is, so ideally what a classification is that anything lesser than 15 degrees, but let's say 20 degrees. So anything that is lesser than 20 degrees is considered a dissipative beach, right? So another very interesting fact would be dissipative beaches would have more animals occupying that zone, lesser animals here, because it's a hard zone to negotiate. You really can't, it's one of the hardest zones in the world to exist, right? Okay, so that's, I think we've covered the basics. I should also mention that high energy waves and high energy swash zones, less energy swash zones, right? I think I forgot to mention here that the ocean is very dynamic and pools are static, so the water doesn't move as much as compared to dynamic, and it's dynamic because of waves, currents, tides. So we'll cover each category as we do the sessions, but this is the reason why the ocean is dynamic. And here there are waves, there are currents, and there is a very minimal effect of tide, but it's nowhere compared to this, right? So it's almost negligible, like it cancels out all the time. The only greatest effect in a pool we generally feel is wind, like when the wind creates the ripples, which we were talking about waves. We'll talk about ripples and waves in that category. So I think we have understood how beaches can be understood as, so we're just putting it on a small scale, and we have also classified two sides of a scale when it comes to open waters. So we're understanding the ocean, and then we're transferring the next part, which would be, I think let's move on to how the ocean, let's move on to the beach.